Jamil, how are you? You're looking very well today.
Thank you very much, Maria. I feel very well, actually. I've got a week's holiday coming up, so that always makes you feel better. Not that I'm going anywhere, but at least it's a week off.
I thought you felt better when you come back rather than when you're going. I always feel really stressed when I'm going because I have to get everything done so nobody disturbs me. So it's interesting you're the other. You're a weird one, aren't you? You're a psychologist, isn't that right?
Well, I'm a psychologist and a performance coach, and I also pack very lightly. So there's probably a few things in there which allow me to relax pre-holiday and post-holiday.
I know I'm not mastered at packing. Like we'll talk about that later separately. So you've mentioned that you're a performance psychologist, a performance coach. What got you interested in performance psychology in the beginning?
I think that I've always realized that the difference between those who win and those who lose is often what goes on behind the eyes. So, be it in sport or be it in business. And so I was always interested in how I can maximize my own performance. I started playing cricket, and I was rubbish. And people say, well, look, technically you're good, but it's your mindset which is poor. So don't worry about your technique; it's your thinking which is bad. And that's what got me thinking about thinking. And so I did quite a bit of research. I did quite a bit of reading. I didn't study psychology at the time. I'd actually studied business and marketing. But then I decided to chase my passion more than my pension and get involved in something that I enjoy. And that was psychology and performance coaching. I just had lots of good fortune, really. As soon as I decided that, I was going to try and sort of pursue this area, I started working at the highest level straight away by pure luck, and so it was great to not build my career, but almost just get started in coaching some very, very good sports people.
Brilliant, that's fantastic. I love the chase your passion, not your pension. Do you have a pension, Jamil? Because you've got a family. I hope you have.
I don't have a pension actually. No, no. So I've got a few business interests, and property is quite a significant pension for me at the moment. So let's just hope it continues going the way in which it always has.
Yeah, absolutely. I have my fingers crossed for you. So you mentioned that you've worked with some big names. You have, and particularly actually in golf. In 2008, you were voted one of the top 100 most powerful men in golf by your international peers, which is rather odd as you don't play. Is not playing a handicap? Do you like that? Handicap golf?
Very good. I
Yeah.
found your humour, Maria. Yeah, so no, you are right that I was sort of quite, people liked what I did in golf, and so worked with some very good sports teams, also very well, in fact, the Ryder Cup team, some very good sports teams in golf, as well as in Premiership and cricket and the like. But I also worked with some very good golfers, lots of the top 50 over the last sort of 10 years. I think that, I mean, for me, it was, I always say that the immigrant sees things that the citizen is blind to. So, when you're used to doing something, you see things in a particular way. And then I came in with no knowledge of the sport. I've got no interest in golf. I don't like it. I don't really know that much about it. But I work with some of the best golfers on the planet. And I think that it's more of a marriage of skills. So I know a little bit about psychology. You know a lot about golf. Let's come together and see if we can create something which is bigger and better than what we could create on our own. So I think it's quite an advantage not to know golf, because when the players wanted to talk golf to me, it was pointless. So they had to talk about other things, and they were the things that really mattered, about focus, about attention, about goal setting, about what they were thinking and feeling on the golf course, which then drove their actions on the golf course.
Actually, I'd love at this point, if you don't mind, for you to share one of the stories that you've shared in the past about a golfer who wanted to be, I believe he wanted to be in the top five, and you talked to him about believing he was and behaving in that way. Could you share that story?
Yeah, it's a different story to what I thought you were going to go to then. Actually, I have so many golf stories that yeah. So I will I'll share that with you. There's a nice little principle called act as if, and the principle of act as if is that we must be now what we wish to become to allow us to be it. So it's thinking in the present tense, basically. So I think he was 50th in the world at the time, and he said that I want to be in the top five in the world. So I said to him that, well, if you want to be top five in the world, imagine that you're top five now. And congratulations, we shook hands. It was a time when we were allowed to shake hands. And I said that if you're top 5 in the world today, we agreed to meet in the bar tonight. But that was when you were 50th in the world. And so we said 7:30 in the bar, and we were abroad at the time. I think we were in Singapore. So we said at 7:30 in the bar, but you made that decision as 50th in the world. Now that you're 5th in the world, do you want to change it? Have a think about it. And what would you be drinking if you were 5th in the world tonight? What time would you leave the bar? What time do you get to the course tomorrow? How do you take your shoes out the locker? And what do you practice? Who do you practice with? What do you eat? So we went through this, and he thought about it as top 5 in the world. He found out it was completely different, Maria, to what he was doing at 50th in the world and what he would have done. But all the changes that he would make, he didn't need to be 5th in the world to make. He said, I drink water tonight instead of drinking alcohol. Because I'm 5th in the world, I want to be number 1 in the world. So therefore, I want to win this week. So he actually could make all those changes to enable him to get 5th in the world. But didn't need to be 5th in the world to make them. And it's the same with sort of business audiences. When I talk to sort of business people, I'll often say, imagine that you're the most collaborative person, if that's the thing that we're working on. And if you were, how would you shape your diary this week? And who would you call to the meeting? Who would you share those outputs with? And so you can do it for anything. And if I was the most bold person in the team, or the most creative person in the team, it's quite a nice little technique, actually. I'm not sure we've done it justice in our few minutes, but when you work through it and see how it works, it can be incredibly useful for people.
I love it. I love act as if, and I love the thinking in the present tense. It's not easy, but it is powerful. You're absolutely right. It is powerful. I like that. So you've actually got 30 psychological principles that you've developed, and they're simple to understand, which means that they're simple to implement. Can you share a couple of those with us? You've shared act as if. Can you share a couple more?
Well, yes, I can. But, so this is just a free one-to-one, isn't it, Maria? That's all it is.
Yeah, well, I like to use you as personal therapy. You know that, yeah.
But one that I always talk about is E plus R equals O, and I talk about it quite a lot. Event plus reaction equals outcome. So I'm a firm believer that blame looks backwards and responsibility looks forwards. And so let's understand circumstance and situation, but then understand our responsibility to make good choices in light of those circumstances to drive the best outcomes or best opportunities. I also talk about reducing fear, and particularly fear in the workplace. I think it's a great inhibitor of human progress. So fear, and I say it's an acronym, false evidence appearing real. And it's more about trying to contextualize and gain a proper perspective on the importance of fear and experiencing failure to drive further success. And just on a note on that one, Maria, I always think that sports people know it better than business people. And I apologize now to our business audience, but it's true. There's lots of sports people who understand that failure is part payment towards success. And the price of success is always paid in full and in advance. You can't be successful, and then start making mistakes. It doesn't work that way. But lots of sports people will learn their way to number one, by experiencing success and failure equally, and learning from both equally as a result of it.
Thank you for those. It is personal therapy for me. Thank you. In sharing the E and R and also the E plus R equals O and reducing fear, those two actually must be really relevant at the moment, especially the whole fear. We're at the time of recording, going back into offices, opening up, and sort of, we've been at home safe, washing our hands for the last year, and it's sort of all going back to, I'm making inverted commas for anyone listening, normal. Do you think there is more fear around at the moment?
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, and understandably so. 2008 was this intellectual crisis. Now is more of an existential crisis. It's affected hearts and minds. We've all been touched in some way. Some people financially, some people in regard to health of themselves and their loved ones. So there's been turmoil, disruption, uncertainty, and complexity. So I think that lots of people, understandably, lots of leaders, lots of organisations have been operating in a climate of what they don't want to lose. I think that those who have done particularly well are organisations who haven't tried to go back to normal, but in fact saw this as a portal to step through into something which is more, reimagined, repurposed, reinvented, to be more sustainably successful. So I often think that we're motivated either by what we want to achieve and create, or we're motivated by what we want to avoid. And I think that those who have not battened down the hatches necessarily and try to maintain their position, try to hold on to what they've got, being protectionist. But I've managed to see the beauty in the chaos and saw the disruption as potential opportunity, have fared particularly well. So yes, there is more fear, and I agree that that's the case. And in fact, I've seen my content change actually, Maria, as well. Lots of things that I've been talking to organizations about and helping with my programs and workshops, have been based upon how to think more expansively and ambitiously, how to think differently and play into this new world in a different way, which creates more opportunities and new possibilities. But I think that the reason why I've been talking about that is because many people have put their heads down and pedaled fast to try and hold a position. Interestingly, as you talk to me now, I feel that many organisations and leaders are coming out of that. I think they're much more accepting the fact that the situation has changed for many, and we're now operating in a different world, and perhaps looking more expansively and creatively about what we can become and what we can have as a result of it.
That's really positive. I like that. And I've written down pedal faster to hold a position. I do feel that that's what we've done. We have been pedaling faster to stay in the same place, which is hard. And I also like the fact that you're focusing on achieving and creating as opposed to avoiding. I think that's really positive. So I wanted to ask you actually what's changed, since we've been going through COVID. And do you think your topics will change further as we come out more of COVID? Fingers crossed we will, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'm helping many organisations with their people strategies at the moment. So culture, engagement, and team dynamics, and how that's changed. So lots of people have been at home for the last 18 months, alone with their soul, thinking about who they work for, why they work, what their career means. And so therefore, I think teams will change quite substantially. So whether we all went back to work tomorrow or back into the office, and I don't think the dynamic will be the same as what it was pre-COVID. So many organizations are looking at team and leadership in the new context, and the world in which we're now living in. And what does it look like to maximize the potential of our people? How do we optimize capability and knowledge resource that we have within the business to create more agile and open-minded teams that can start to, deploy resource to opportunity as it reveals itself. So I think that many of the things that I've been talking about is how we can become more agile and open-minded, how we can make better choices and decision-making in a time of disruption and complication. We've been talking quite a lot about how we can be more purposeful as an organization, as leaders. And the other big one, I guess, is leading teams. So going back to, I guess, my original start to this answer, that how do we lead and manage a team, whilst the dynamic is as different as it is now.
Fantastic. And are you finding that different departments in a business wish to engage with you with different content, or are you covering the same content with each departments, with each levels?
That's a really good question. No, I think they're very different, actually. It's funny because, I work with marketing teams and do quite a lot on stakeholder management, how we develop relevant content in regard to changing consumer buying behaviors or customers and clients, and the way in which their needs have changed, or even if their needs haven't changed, maybe the way in which they want to access their needs have changed. I work with HR teams quite significantly, so HR learning and development, and that's all about how we create a culture for performance moving forwards, to do with how we organize our talent, recruit and retain talent. But I do a lot with sales teams too, because obviously sales teams, client development people, customer success teams, go-to-market teams, all these people, are now working in the way in which you and I are having this interview. So it's very different. The way in which we influence, persuade, negotiate, the way in which we build relationships is changing. So some people who are external facing almost need new psychology in the way in which we build relationships. And of course, as you well know, my mainstay over the last however many years has been working with leadership teams to create what I call future relevant and future literate organizations, and that's all based upon the culture that we create within our teams, to allow performance to be relevant to the time that we're in.
Absolutely brilliant, future relevant, absolutely really important. Tell me, Jamil, because I know you've just come out of your busiest month ever, which is crazy because we are still more or less sort of, half open as a world, and yet you've had your busiest year. What have you learned about your speaking business?
Oh, do you know what? It's funny. I think that one thing that I've learned about it is that probably one thing I've learned about myself, I guess, is the ability to reinvent and adapt. So I think we all have. I hope that we all see that we've all had to adapt and we've all had to reinvent. So I don't think that's peculiar to me. I think it's relevant to lots of people. So I realised that about myself. So I went from speaking on a stage to a few hundred people in quite a transactional way. I'd stand up for an hour. I would talk to a few hundred people in Barcelona or Dubai, somewhere wonderful. And then I would go again. And now it's quite different because I now sort of chat to initials. So it's nice to see a real person, Maria. And you're as real as they get. So it's quite nice. So I'm usually sort of speaking to initials now. And a lot of the work is program based. So not necessarily just the transactional speaking, but some people might want you to put together a program of 4 events over the year, quarterly, or can you work with our leadership team over 6 months and our sales guys over 6 months and to develop this, that, or the other. And so, I think I've gone from transactional standing on a stage to much more transformational working with teams and programs in a more developed and 3-dimensional way. And I think that 2 things have happened really. That one, I've been doing that retained work and I'm working in that way, but also speaking events have come back with a vengeance. So I think in relation to the fact that I've had my sort of best July ever, and I'll have my best September ever, it's probably because of the 2 strands in which I operate. So I'm doing lots of consultancy work, and that's what I call it, the leadership development piece and team development piece. And with that, I'm punctuating it with lots of speaking engagements. And I do feel that companies used to have that one big sort of sales thing in sort of a EMEA sales kickoff, in Madrid, and I'll invite 400 people from around the world. And obviously that's not been happening. So some of these companies that I work with in that way are now employing me 4 or 5 times in the year because they don't need to splash out on the big hotel and lots of flights. So because that isn't the case, we can now have a speaker 4 times quarterly, and maybe regional events more so than the big one. So although it's virtual, virtual regional event at different time zones. So maybe that's why it's got particularly busy, because some of these organizations that had the one big event can now afford to have 4 or 5 and be flexible about when they hold them too.
I like that. I like the fact that they're really getting a lot more value, aren't they? And also the fact that you're able to work with more people within an organization. And what you've been talking about, you've had your services retained so that you can make sustainable change rather than just go in and I always say more than just a speech. I like that you use the words from transactional to transformational. That's what organizations need, isn't it?
Well, it is. And I think, so, I know you and I have talked about it several times. And it's true that, when someone employs you to come and do a talk, you're not there to do a talk. And you're not a speaker. You don't fill the hour. There's some sort of, what I call ROO, this return on objective. There's a reason why people are coming together. There's a reason why people want a speaker there. And that's to help people change how they think or change how they feel or change how they act. And so therefore, what you want to do is to create an experience more so than to do a talk, which allows people to engage with a different perspective in that half an hour or an hour, which may hopefully in turn allow them to drive different actions and behaviors due to feeling and thinking differently. So everything heads towards creating something, and these events are just a simple part of the marketing mix. So they're one word in a sentence. Everything is heading towards something which is of relevance to the business. And as a speaker, the more you uncover that, the more of a role you can play in helping an organization or a team get to where they're trying to get to. And so, this is why I know you and I have talked a lot about it in your previous role of booking speakers. It was never transactional for you. It was always about who can contribute best to the strategic plans of the client organization through that medium of 1 hour an event. And I think that it's an important positioning for clients to think about when they're booking a speaker or a facilitator or a workshop person. And it's an important perspective for us as speakers and facilitators to realize our responsibility isn't just to that hour and that audience, but to the strategic objectives and purpose of that particular event or of that particular organization.
And that is why you have had your busiest July and why you're going to have your busiest September, because you get it. You're absolutely right. It's about providing that experience, and it's about sort of igniting them in a way, isn't it, to, as you say, think, feel or act differently. Totally right. And I know you've spent a lot of time on getting your content right and presenting it well. And I mean, you are an artist on stage. You really are. It's a wonderful experience. It's a wonderful experience, Jamil. I mean, I'm totally biased, as you know. So I'll send you an invoice after this call. Tell me, do you think your topics will change in the future?
Yeah, they will. Yeah, absolutely. They're changing now. I'm talking much more about the future. I'm talking more, and not necessarily AI, AR, nanotechnology, blockchain. It's much more about how we engage with the future. So much more about how we can be as human beings that come together, connect, share, coordinate and collaborate our talent to provide something purposeful and meaningful to the communities that we serve. So much more about the future of, let's say future of work, but also future of people in organizations. I'm talking much more about culture in a more developed way than I have, and much more about how we can be more open-minded and agile. And of course, with that comes subjects such as curiosity, which I haven't really talked too much about before. I've realised its importance, but I may touch upon it. But now people want me to do an hour on curiosity, and because they see it as a cultural asset, they see it as something which is a key asset moving forwards. Talk about experimentation and how we can create a culture for experimentation. And I'm convinced that of all the work I've done this year, that those who experiment the most will win. It's always better to be disrupted from the inside than from the outside. And, the pace of change internally must match the pace of change externally. So how do organizations do it? How do they ensure that they're changing as fast as the world around them? So there's quite a lot which I'm talking about, which, although it's my area, and I haven't necessarily talked about it in the depth that I do now. It's usually something I touch upon in 10 or 15 minutes of a Q&A, but now people want the practicality of how they future-proof their organizations through their people.
I like the word practicality. It's so important that it's practical. So Jamil, we're rapidly running out of time, which is amazing. It always flies by when I talk to you. What would you like to leave the audience with? What thought, what tidbit can we leave them with?
Okay. Can I leave 2 tidbits?
Yes.
So 2. I'm pretty convinced that there's going to be 2 types of company in the future, brave or dead, and it's up to us as leaders to choose which one we want to be part of. So bravery, being bold, is an important consideration for leaders and organisations. How do we create a perspective based upon bolder decisions, which allow us new possibilities and new opportunities, play into this world in a different way, and create something which is more sustainably successful, something more robust than what we had before. So boldness and bravery are key. And then the other thing that I'd like to leave is a sense of optimism. What we had before was clearly broken. It didn't really work, and so therefore its fragility has been exposed. With this particular virus, and I'd like to think that now is an opportunity for us to step into reimagining, repurposing, and reinventing in a new way. And many organisations who I'm working with, the ones who really struggled, were the ones who tried to go back to normal. The ones who are most motivated and energised, purposeful, are the ones who are seeing this as an opportunity to recreate. I always think that purpose maximization will always drive profit maximization. Let's galvanize people behind something worthy. Let's create more value for who we are and what we do. And passion is a significant multiplier of human performance. So those organizations who are getting passionate, getting engaged, thinking about their contribution, becoming more sustainably successful, are creating a real energy and real motivation within the organization and for those outside it who touch it. So I think there's a lot of good work going on out there with a lot of good companies, and I think that we can build back better.
I love that. What a wonderful, optimistic message to leave us on. Jamil, thank you so much. Bear with me for one moment while I wrap things up before you go and pack lightly for your holiday. So thank you for listening to The Speaker Show. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on Apple Podcasts. You can keep up with future episodes on the Speakers Associates website, that's speakersassociates.com, or your favourite podcast app. And if you need Jamil's help in your organisation, be sure to contact Speakers Associates in time to book him for your next event. See you next week, and that's bye-bye from me and bye-bye from Jamil.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, Maria.
Thank you.